All right, so today we're going to dig into the chemistry behind gold mining, which, let's be honest, can be pretty fascinating and also really controversial. For, over 100 years, getting gold out of the ground has meant using some seriously potent chemicals. But what if there's something new out there? A different ingredient that could change the whole game? Let's get into it.
So here's the fundamental problem, right? You've got tons and tons of solid rock. Gold doesn't just pop out in these big shiny nuggets like you see in the movies. Nope. Most of the time, it's just these microscopic specks, totally invisible, and they're locked deep inside all that ore. So the big question is, how on earth do you get it out?
Well, for decades, the industry's main answer has been a pretty intense chemical, sodium cyanide. And look, it works. It's incredibly good at dissolving that gold and pulling it away from the rock. But, and this is a huge but, it's also famously toxic. We're talking major risks for workers, for the environment, especially if it's not handled with just absolute extreme care. And that right there has always been the central issue.
And that really brings us to what you could call gold's big chemical dilemma. The very same stuff that makes it possible to get the gold is also what makes the whole process so dangerous. It's this catch-22 that has pushed chemists and mining companies to hunt for a better, maybe safer, alternative for years and years.
So that brings us to a potential new contender in this whole search. It's a product that basically markets itself as the answer to that exact problem. It's called JIN CHAN.
And here it is. You can see the logo, and more importantly, you can see its key claim right there on the label: environment-friendly gold dressing agent. Now that is a bold statement, especially in the mining world. So for the rest of this explainer, we're going to do something interesting. We're going to unpack what that really means by digging right into its own user manual.
Okay, but first things first, what even is a gold dressing agent? It sounds kind of fancy, but it's really just a technical term for a chemical that helps separate, or dress, the valuable stuff, like gold, from all the raw rock. You can basically think of it as the key ingredient in the whole extraction recipe.
So, what exactly is JIN CHAN? According to the manual, it's a powder, kind of grayish-white or earthy yellow, and its main component is something called carbonized sodium cyanurate. Its job? Well, its purpose is crystal clear. Do the exact same thing sodium cyanide does. Pull out gold and silver from all kinds of ore, even old mining leftovers or tailings.
Okay, so we know what it is now, but the million-dollar question is, how do you actually use it? The user manual lays out the whole process, so let's walk through the steps together.
All right, the main process is called leaching, and on the surface, it seems pretty simple. Step 1, you dissolve this powder in water. Step 2, you've got to get the chemistry perfect by adjusting the pH level. And then, step 3, you apply that liquid solution to the rock that has the gold in it. From there, the JIN CHAN is supposed to work its magic, dissolving the gold so it can be separated and collected.
And here's where it gets really interesting. Check out that required pH value, between 10.5 and 11.5. That is a super narrow, very specific window. It tells you right away that this isn't just about mixing some powder and water. No, this is a very carefully controlled chemical reaction we're talking about.
And yeah, the level of control definitely doesn't stop with the pH. The manual also lays out a recommended temperature, 10 degrees Celsius or higher. It says you have to be constantly testing the solution for its gold content, its pH, its concentration, and it warns you, do not mix this with strong oxidants. So what's the big takeaway here? Even though it's an alternative to cyanide, this is still a very complex, industrial-grade chemical that absolutely requires real expertise to handle.
Okay, and this brings us to what I think is the most critical part of the whole manual. This is the section that really puts that environment-friendly claim into perspective. We're talking about the safety protocols. You gotta handle this stuff with care.
Right off the bat, the manual makes something crystal clear. And I'm quoting directly here. It is forbidden to use JIN CHAN in illegal mineral exploration or recycling without any approval of authorities. So let's be real, this is not something you buy for a weekend hobby. It's a serious, regulated industrial chemical.
And the list of don'ts in the manual, wow, it's pretty revealing. It says you must not use it with acidic chemicals. You must not use it in places that are poorly ventilated or confined. The pulp and the leachates, basically the chemical sludge, must not leak, and you have to keep it far, far away from poultry, livestock, and fish. So yeah, that tells you something really important. It might be an alternative to cyanide, but it is definitely not harmless. So what does all this mean for the actual people, the workers who are handling it? Well, it means they need head-to-toe protection. We're talking effective dust masks, respirators, goggles, splash masks, industrial-grade rubber gloves, full work clothes, and, get this, they even need to have emergency oxygen respirators on site. These are not just casual suggestions. These are serious precautions for handling a seriously potent chemical.
And what if something does go wrong? What if it gets on your skin? The first aid instructions are incredibly specific. First, you immediately wipe it off with a dry towel. Then, you rinse with tons of clean water. Then, you rinse again with a medical boric acid solution. And finally, if there's any discomfort, you go to a hospital immediately. That kind of detailed multi-step emergency plan really drives the point home. Any direct contact with this stuff is a big deal.
So, after going through the user manual, what's the big picture here? Is JIN CHAN really the new golden rule for making mining safer? Let's try to put it all together. Okay, let's just put them side by side for a second. In one corner, you have traditional sodium cyanide. Everyone knows it's highly effective but also highly toxic. In the other corner, you have JIN CHAN. The marketing says environment friendly, and it's made from a different chemical, carbonized sodium cyanurate. But as we just saw from its own manual, it still requires a whole bunch of precautions and full protective gear. So maybe the real difference here isn't about getting rid of risk entirely, but more about changing the type of risk you're dealing with.
And this all leaves us with a really important final question, doesn't it? Could greener chemicals, even if they still require really strict handling, be the future of mining? You know, it seems like safer doesn't necessarily mean completely safe. Maybe the path forward isn't about finding some magical, perfectly harmless substance. Maybe it's about innovating chemicals that are, less acutely toxic than the old stuff. It's all a really complex trade-off, isn't it? A balance between efficiency and risk, and that's the trade-off that really defines this whole quest for gold's next hidden ingredient.